Good afternoon, and welcome to the Digital Transformation Happy Hour. For those of you that know, this is a bi-weekly streaming show on LaRoche's LinkedIn Live channel, and it's specifically dedicated to connecting education and hospitality education specifically with the really cool digital transformation that's happening in the hospitality business. So today we have a really cool panel that I'm going to share with you. We've got three experts, and specifically experts that know a lot about the small independent segment of the hospitality industry. So we're going to talk a lot about how technology is changing that part of the business right now. But before we get into the details, let me bring the panelists out. So today, the first panelist to join us is a gentleman by the name of Daniel Plancic. Daniel is the managing director and a partner at the SHS Academy. And Daniel, welcome to the show, first of all, and tell us a little bit about yourself and SHS Academy and your role there.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm talking to you guys from Bern, from the capital of Switzerland, obviously the most beautiful city in Switzerland. And we've been running the SHS Academy for 4 years now. It's a subsidiary of a consultancy firm who is specialized in revenue management and digital marketing for small Swiss hotels, and we provide executive education, short-term programs to hoteliers here in Switzerland.
Cool. All right, Neil. Thanks very much. Oops. Okay, now let me bring out our next guest. Our next guest, William Cotter, is founder and managing director of a company called Affinity, and he's definitely no stranger to the small hotel segment since he does a lot of his support work in that segment. So, William, first of all, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about Affinity.
Hey, Scott. Thanks very much for the introduction and for inviting us to be part of your webinar today. So I'm managing director of Affinity. Founded the business back in 2000, so we're 20 years on the go this month. So we'll be celebrating our 20th birthday in about 2 weeks' time. So what we do, we work with independent hotels and small groups right across Europe, from the UK, Ireland to Belgium, Spain, Eastern Europe, but we also do a little bit of business in the Far East, Middle East, and South Africa. The main business, or let's say technology that we sell into hotels, is booking engine, website builder, and marketing services. So marketing services in terms of meta, paid search, paid social activity. And I guess the real value that we bring to hotels is working with hotels to drive their direct business. And I guess that's the value add that's there as such. So we're in the business of helping hotels grow their direct business by driving their marketing activity into the website through the booking engine and so forth. In terms of company, we're based in Dublin, team of 48.
Nice. So really that service, really interesting service in the scale of hotels, and that's why I'm super excited to get some of your insight in that, because in many cases, larger hotels, and especially branded hotels, they tend to have those services kind of predetermined who the vendor is, right? And so in order to be able to be successful competing with even smaller hotels in smaller markets, if they happen to be branded, a hotelier really has to kind of really understand this stuff now. So, so super. So welcome. Let me bring out the third panelist, and then we're going to jump in. We're going to jump right into our stuff. So our third panelist is no stranger to the folks at LaRoche. He's done some stuff with us before. Been a great partner for me in some of my classes and programs. Ari Andricopolous is the founder and CEO of a really cool startup revenue management company called RoomPriceGenie that is specifically, in my opinion, doing some really cool stuff in the small hotel segment. So I don't think I stole too much of your thunder, Ari, but tell us about yourself. Tell us about RoomPriceGenie and what you guys do there.
I'm CEO of RoomPriceGenie. We were founded 3 years ago, and the idea was that not just large hotels can do revenue management, not just chains. Though it's inspired by my father has got a 15-room bed and breakfast in the Isle of Wight in England, and why not, with the technology available now? Why can he not why can he not compete on a level playing field with these larger hotels? And so we spent 3 years sort of getting to the stage we are now, which is a good position.
Fantastic. Yeah, I actually, full disclosure, I do some stuff with you guys. We partnered on several things, and that's what I think is really cool about it, is the scalability. So we'll get into that in a moment, how this technology is now becoming available to smaller hoteliers, and they can, without killing the bottom line, so to speak. But let's get our other panelists out here, if you don't mind, Carolina, and let's talk a little bit about what's the current state. And I think we've got some interesting expertise. We have William and Ari, kind of a little more global expertise, and then Daniel. In a moment, I'm going to ask you because very specifically, you work very closely with the Swiss market,
Yes.
and I think it's a really, really good example of kind of what's emblematic in this space globally. So let me ask you, William. I mean, there's clearly an opportunity for some of this stuff to make the industry better. What kind of tech is in place currently in hotels? I mean, what with your customers, what's there already?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the size of the property. I mean, let's say smaller properties, 20-bedroom or less, they'll definitely have like a website and a booking engine, and maybe have a PMS system. I mean, and the PMS could be an in-house PMS or a cloud-based PMS solution. And what we tend to see is, as you go larger or go up the scale in terms of the size of the property, well, then more tech comes into play. So if you go up to like an 80-bedroom property, for example, well, then, a hotel might start using things like an RMS, channel manager. They might use a housekeeping tool, and so forth. So in other words, as the property scales up in size, well, then more tech is required to run that business as such. So smaller properties, they can still continue to run their business with a diary if they so wish. But certainly the very base technology that they need would be a website and a booking engine, for example.
Okay. So from a hard tech perspective, we've got folks even really that are not taking advantage of the cloud yet. In that space, and I mean, it's interesting. Do you think that's a resistance to change? Do you think? I mean, what's I mean, that's internet. There almost must be a profile of the person that still has a server on the property to run a PMS at a 100-room hotel. So what's up with them? Let's ask it that way.
Yeah, I think it's. There's probably a couple of things at play in it, really. I mean, one is, if they have a PMS sitting on a server in the hotel, well, then they might say, okay, look, it's working. It's not broken. We don't need to fix it, or we don't need to replace it as such. Secondly, I guess there's a cost element in terms of, okay, what's the cost to change the tech, and it's not just the cost in terms of the software cost, it's the training cost and the knock-on effect that it might have on operations as such. For sure, there's an element of, let's say, fear of the unknown, fear of the tech, fear of not understanding everything, and that's understandable because, there's a lot of tech out there, there's a lot of noise, and it's very hard to decipher what's good and what's not good and what's right for their business and so forth.
Okay. Cool. No, I mean, Daniel, let me shift to you because we talked. It's kind of the resident technology in the property, right? And you work with a lot of Swiss hotels. One of the things that I sit in Switzerland as well. One of the big benefits, of course, is we run a pretty nice average rate here, which tends to cure some evils, and make you potentially not have to search under every stone for profitability like you would in a much lower rated market. But what's your sense for some of the other technology, like distribution technology, channel management, revenue management systems, decision-making, information technology, sort of some of the, I guess, the stuff that doesn't necessarily live at the hotel, but still is key to revenue management today?
Well, there's this element, this short phrase that William just said, the fear of technology is something that we face very, very often. When it comes to bringing tech to these small hotels. Of course, the Swiss hotel landscape is very diversified. We have players that are excellent in the tech sphere and have their hotel tech stack in place, use the technology, even start to work more strategically. And then on the other hand, we have a lot of hotels who still struggle with adapting technology, really understanding the options and the opportunities that they have. I think this is a bit the question of, will they understand the value? Will they be able to conceptualize the use of the technology for their business? And this is something that this is a case that we meet very often, that it's a question of trust in the end. So it's a question of culture. a bit. I watched your short video you did with RoomPriceGenie, Scott, where you say, where you talk about the competence, and the hotel needs to acquire the competence to be able to work with the technology. And I think we still have a gap. It's a paradox. Switzerland, birthplace of hospitality education, right? But then the other hand, we have this knowledge gap that we're trying to close a bit.
It's interesting, and I wonder. I want you to comment on almost a little bit culturally, because it seems in a lot of places when someone figures something out, then there's a lot of copycats, right? They duplicate things, but it does seem like that the uptake on technology here is real slow. So it's not like everyone's realizing the opportunity and copying the one guy that figured it out first, or the one person that figured it out first. So what do you think that is? Why do you think that takes place?
It's difficult. I think it's rooted in the Swiss mentality, and we're a diverse country, right? We're a very small country. What did you say? Size of Vermont, perhaps, or
Vermont and New Hampshire combined.
That's exactly right. New Hampshire. That's what you said. But still, we have 4 official languages. We have 26 cantons, right? And there are different cultures that meet and become that what Switzerland is. On one hand, we have with ETH in Zurich and in Lausanne, we have 2 of the top universities in continental Europe. And then on the other hand, we have, hotels who can't get, the basic stuff right. So it's the diversity. It's something I struggle often in trainings, that we have people that are at the very high level tech savvy people. And on the other hand, it's, about explaining what the channel manager is. So it's this struggle we're in, but actually this makes the job also interesting. It gives you diversity.
Yeah, that's true, right? If everyone just could kind of figure it out from their neighbor, then there'd be no role for many of us. We're going to talk a little bit more about the uptake in just a second, because I think it's so critical in terms of what people's mindsets are and really being able to help them understand it. But let me jump to Ari real quick, Ari, and really kind of get the tech perspective on it, and interesting tech perspective, because you mentioned your dad's hotel, small hotel, very small hotel, and I think that inspired you to approach technology a little bit differently. And so I'm wondering if you could kind of reflect a little bit about, I guess what I would say when I describe your company to people, I don't talk about the amazing things you do. I talk about the things that you don't do, which is create additional work, which cannot be done at a small hotel because there's no infrastructure to pick up that additional responsibility. So what are some of the things technology-wise that have enabled you to solve a problem that up until now was not really directly solved, frankly?
I think the largest reason that this hasn't really been done before is that the software didn't used to be open enough. So the API connections, which can link different software together, different databases together, that has meant that what all of us in hotel technology are doing now is possible. You've got these property management systems that will now accept sort of plugins of other apps. Each one can do their speciality, and so you then can put together, any hotel can put together an amazing technology stack, and that just wasn't possible before. And so we sort of come at the right time for that. And I think what we've maybe done differently is looked at it not from the point of view of what the large hotels are doing now and try and transfer that directly to the smaller hotels. What we've done is said, what do the small hotels need to? We've sort of gone from a different angle and said, what do the small hotels need to get their pricing right from sort of first principles? And so that's sort of where we are at the moment. We're sort of at this sort of and it's got to be something that they can understand, and it's got to be something that they feel comfortable using. And so it can't be too complex in terms of their, what we provide for them. And just in the context of my father, what we've done with him, basically, I mean, he's 81. So, it's basically just turned it on, pressed play, left it, and he doesn't log in, and just left it there. And that's the level that we need to be at if if it's going to work. I think for some.
Yeah, I think I love that about your product, that it gives a great recommendation in that way. If someone's a little more sophisticated in their process, they can influence it a little bit, and in some cases just feel more comfortable with the outcome because they've had some influence, right? Not necessarily even improve the outcome as we found, but definitely I think that's a really good point, right? That just the scalability. It used to be, if you wanted to implement revenue management system, there were some options and they were fantastic, but they were designed for 1,000-room hotels that have no trouble picking up 20 hours a week of maintenance to make that system provide good information, where a little hotel just kind of doesn't have that. And combine that with the switching costs of big systems like that becomes very difficult. So now all of a sudden, as you mentioned, where you can add pieces to your stack, or you can potentially get rid of one that you don't like without having to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, I think has really, caused this to become approachable for people. So let me ask you, so, William, we started to get into a little bit about why the uptake is what it is, but talk a little bit about, from the hotelier perspective, when they approach you about technology, what's the mindset? I mean, what typically generates that initial interest, or even the willingness to accept your call? What's that mindset?
Yeah, I think Daniel kind of touched on it a little bit, in the sense that, some hoteliers you talk to, they can be very well informed about the technology side of things, so they know exactly what they want and why they need it, and they keep themselves abreast of what's going on in the market, and they would attend trade shows or webinars and stuff like that. And then you'll have other guys who tend to follow, I guess, maybe are a little bit behind the curve, and tend to be reactive rather than proactive. So, and I guess then you have, that's kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum as such. And then you have, I suppose, maybe a bigger bulk of hoteliers in the middle of all of that, So it really depends on whom you're talking with. And I say, some guys, who are well informed, they know exactly what they want, and in many respects, they're a much easier person to talk with or to sell to, because they know exactly what they're looking for. Whereas the guys who are less informed, you have to educate and inform, as well as, I suppose, sell your product or service to them. And I think, let's say, and again, in terms of the mindset, certainly in some markets, maybe the mindset might be a little bit more conservative, and others may be more willing to adopt and change to tech. And you'll probably find that, say, in the Asian market, for example, they're heavy users of mobile devices in every sense, mobile, in terms of accessing their PMS, their RMS, and so forth. But generally, I think the industry is known to always be a little bit behind the curve in terms of the adoption of technology. And I guess certainly as tech players in this space, we all have a vested interest if everybody moves a little bit faster in terms of the adoption of tech, because the more tech we adopt, it'll actually have a knock-on effect in terms of it'll broaden the market generally, bring more tech into the space. It will allow the existing tech players to integrate better with each other, because even today, we have lots of legacy systems and newer systems that are still operating in silos and are not necessarily talking to themselves or integrating well with each other, And I guess, in my view, I would like us to get to a point where all the tech players, or we have a common API, I guess, that we all write to and that we work and integrate with. And so we don't have to worry too much about the plumbing aspect of the technology, and the plumbing in terms of, the booking engines integrating with the channel managers, and the channel manager integrating with the PMS, and the RMSs into the PMSs and the CRSs and so forth. And all of that is well integrated with each other. And we can then move to the more exciting, fun part in terms of playing with data and looking at technologies that can sit with the data and make more use of that data, and looking at, your guests flow through your website and your personas and so forth, and just getting a lot more intelligent with the data, I guess. So yeah, as with the question in terms of the mindset, it gets. Yeah, it's very much a reflection of the market, the industry, the size of the property, the individual. The individual is
Cool.
a big part of it. Yeah.
Super. Just really quickly, I want to remind folks, you can interact with us in the chat function in all three of the social media channels, wherever you might be potentially watching the stream. And we'd love to address your questions. In some cases, we'll just kind of hold questions until we get to certain sections. But I am paying attention to the questions, and we'll definitely address them. Okay, so Ari, let me shift to you. Slightly different, right, in that you're dealing with one specific piece of technology, but at the same time, really kind of able to approach hoteliers that maybe even been looked at in the past, but didn't necessarily see a financial return on investment because of everything that's evolved. And now you have a different efficiency and different economic model to offer them. What do you guys find as a mindset when you approach hoteliers about your product specifically?
Well, it's an early stage. It's an early stage in the adoption process, I think, for smaller hotels because they may not be aware of the software existing. It's still relatively new software, even for larger hotels. They may not be aware of existing. They may not be aware that it's possible for them, that they need it. I think when Daniel earlier on was talking about Swiss hotels, I think one thing is if you're doing well, because you mentioned the high ADR in Swiss, and if you're doing all right as it is, you're doing fine as it is, and you're happy with that. And so it's one of those sort of areas that I think as it becomes more ubiquitous, people will hear about it more and will want it more. But we're still an early stage, I think.
Okay. Cool. And I mean, I'm sure, you guys, I know, work with all sorts of testimonials and things like that. So again, it's not a lack of the information being available. It's really kind of a more of a lack of the uptake, honestly, in the interest level. So now, Daniel, let me shift to you. I'm going to ask you to, I know you a little bit, so I'm going to ask you to be a little bit philosophical and look into the future for me. Do you think the current situation, I mean, I saw some recent projections that expected the industry to be down about 30% in Switzerland on the year. Unless there was an amazing January and February, I personally would anticipate to be even more when it's finally all said and done. And so it certainly is going to shake up some people, right, that have not had it, probably have not experienced more than a 1 or 2% decline over the course of the entire time the family has owned a certain business or something. So do you think that has an opportunity to kind of chip away at this mindset a little bit as people are looking to recover?
That's what I thought when I listened to William's explanations, which I completely agree with. I thought, hopefully, that at least there will be this shift of mindset after this tectonic times we're going through with this COVID scenario. So I really, really hope that we will. A lot of hoteliers will adapt a more agile mindset. There has also been this meme going around: who pushed digital transformation in your company, the CEO, the CTO, or COVID-19, right? So what I would like to add, I'm always, I'm very much onto these, wondering how are we going to influence mindset through training, through education. And one thing that I came up with, I think that hoteliers need to adapt this, some kind of business analyst role to a certain extent, understanding how these systems interact. It's often our consultants who do it, who train and who consult an individual, just as William said, that it's often the individual who drives this this transformation process. So we equip them with the skills needed for their now in particular revenue management strategy.
And this, let me ask you a question. Let me actually interrupt you. So you bring up a perfect point, right, and a perfect opportunity to talk about it. And that is, in many markets, the Smith Travel Report, the STR reports are integral, right? 95% of the hotels in the United States receive it, for example. But here it's even though in many cases it would not have a cost because it's provided by a lot of the tourism boards and that sort of thing, many hotels don't subscribe. So do you think that this drives a little bit more? It's almost like there's a very much, the majority of the focus is within my own building, as opposed to an understanding of a greater market with these hotels. Do you think that drives some of that change possibly?
Well, I have my opinions.
That's why I'm asking.
You know that I'm not a diplomat. So I think we should push this in Switzerland, this whole benchmarking approach. I can't understand why the hotels do not participate in particular reasons. Then on the other hand, we have a lot of hotels who don't work with the basic revenue. I'm sorry to tell you this, Scott, don't work with the basic revenue metrics. Makes the digital transformation professor, I hope, not cry. But red
No,
car,
it means I have a job,
RCI.
so it's okay.
You do
Yeah,
have
like
a
it the other
job,
way
and
around.
I really want to congratulate you guys on this innovative curriculum that you set up at Les Roches. I think this should be an example for other schools, because if you look at the curricula of other hotel schools, we're not there yet. There is a potential in this digital transformation thing. So want to congratulate you guys on this one.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, for those that don't know, what Daniel's referring to is I'm the program director of a master's in hospitality strategy and digital transformation, specifically designed to prepare people for these types of careers. And I think you're right. Your statement is very true that for a long time, especially in Switzerland, right, one of the really, quite frankly, the capital of hospitality training on the globe, we've been really good at putting people on a path to become luxury general managers. And, the president of Four Seasons is an EHL graduate. The president of Rosewood is a La Roche graduate. I mean, that's something we know how to create. But when it comes to preparing people for the commercial side of the industry, which is not slow moving, it's digital, it's very rapid moving, or when it comes even for preparing people to work in the companies that help hotels, like online travel agencies and technology providers and those kind of things, we basically have fallen short up until now in that we've made them take someone that we've trained to be a luxury GM, because they recognize the hotel business is important, because you can't go to a hotel and not speak hotel or you're going to get kicked out in 10 seconds. So they take this training and then they try to adapt them to the tech environment, unfortunately with a high failure rate in some cases, because it's not really even if they seem interested in it, they don't even have enough exposure to know that that's a career direction they want to go or don't go. So thank you. It's very much, I appreciate the plug. It was really, really good. Checks in the mail. But it's very true. We do as an industry, that's one of the reflections from the industry to us, is we would like for our businesses become very specialized, and yet you're still producing generalists. So that's great.
Let me just add one thing, because it all comes back to the leadership thing that I also heard in the video I watched you made for RoomPriceGenie. And if you look at apprenticeships in Switzerland, I mean, the young people who enter hospitality industry, there are surveys, and these surveys are very interesting, Scott. There's a survey saying that over 50% of the apprentices in hospitality consider the atmosphere in the company as somewhat strange. I think that was the denomination, strange. So I think this shows exactly, there is this change happening, new generations coming, digital transformation leads to a lot of insecurity, of course. And I think we really need to adapt this, a new type of leadership, because the old style, this is how it's done, this control, command, leadership thing, I think we need to gradually change towards this new agile approach. And I think this program is one of the prime examples that I know of. So
a perfect example of that really is RoomPriceGenie of your statement, Daniel, in that for the longest time, technology people have come to hospitality with solutions. It's a pretty rich industry. We pay big commissions so you can get money. But unfortunately, many times hospitality leadership doesn't go to technology and say, solve this problem for me, right? So we get pretty good solutions, but not perfect. And so when you look at a hotel, which is really, RoomPriceGenie is not conceived by an algorithm. RoomPriceGenie is conceived by a problem in a small hotel and how to reverse engineer it. I think that's it's exactly in the context of what we're talking about today. So I appreciate that. So thank you. So we're going to talk about more about obstacles to implementation in a second. But let's talk a little bit about why this is an important topic in the first place. Right? We really haven't brought that up, right? Each of you guys has a really a super different perspective. So I think one of the things I think people would love to hear is, where do you feel like the biggest places are that hotels of this size are leaving money on the table today? So let me start with William. On the tech side, where's the lowest hanging fruit?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think the answer has to be around the whole revenue management side of things, because that's where it all starts and ends. I mean, it's hotel is a commercial business. It has a room to sell or 20 rooms to sell every day. It's a perishable item, and they've got to price those rooms at a certain point to ensure that they sell as many of those hotels as they possibly can on a daily basis. And they need to decide which channels they sell those rooms on or sell those rooms at. So the better a hotelier is at in terms of their revenue management, in terms of their pricing strategy and the channels of distribution, well, then the better or the more profitable that hotel will be. And so they can certainly do that, say, with a small number of rooms. They can do it manually themselves. And I guess, any owner or operator will know their business really, really well, and they know how best to where to sell the rooms and what price to sell it at. And as the property gets bigger, well, then the need to use a product like an RMS, like RoomPriceGenie, well, then that need increases, because that's where the tech can really help and bring benefit to the hotel, and say, hey guys, you need to be selling, the price that the price that you're selling your rooms at on this channel is slightly off kilter. If you increase your price by 10%, for example, you will improve your bottom line by X%. So to answer the question, I would say it's down to revenue management, down to your pricing strategy and your channels of distribution, and it's not necessarily, don't sell your rooms on the OTAs, which is kind of the traditional drum beating thing as such. The OTAs are a very important part of our distribution channel, but it's really about managing where you sell your stock. And if you do decide to use an OTA, well, then don't give them your best rate, your best dates. Keep your Saturdays or your Sundays or whatever days are your best selling days, the ones that you'll sell. Well, hold on to those yourself and sell them through your own website, or sell them through cheaper channels as such. So yeah, I think for me that would be my main point. I'd say that's where hotels are definitely leaving money on the table.
Okay. All right, I heard a big shout out for revenue management already, but let me ask you next.
Yeah.
Where do you think where's the low hanging fruit?
Yeah, I mean, like for us, just because, and I do think there is a lot that hotels can do, and the in various areas, and I think getting to learn about that is extremely important as well. For us, we do see on a regular basis, we see hotels that make 20% more revenue, 25% more revenue, 30% more revenue, just by having their pricing better. And so looking at my dad's hotel, so I see it firsthand, they increased their revenue by 21% in the year they used it from the previous years, and as I say, they didn't touch it the whole year. And what I saw was when things were quieter, it helps you to just position yourself in a better position, a bit below where everyone else is, and pick up business. And then in busy times, it means you can wait longer. It means you don't need to, when you're going to be filling up, it can start higher, and we can wait, and we can just charge more during busy times. And in the end, you can have a higher ADR overall, and also more occupancy, and so as I say, for them, it improved off season, on season, and yeah, that's a big change for them, and so that's how I do see that as being one of the major things. But I also see it as being a package of things that you learn about and you improve little bits one at a time, and you get all these pieces and improve.
Yeah, you just keep raising, I think, the lowest common denominator as you continue to improve. One of the things I heard you say in that, quite frankly, which was a little bit hidden in it because your technology has the component a little bit hidden in it, is forecasting. So in other words, when do you have the confidence to be more selective? Okay, it's going to be so busy, I can afford to tell some people no that I normally say yes to, because I'm still going to fill my hotel. So yes, I think forecasting, right, another really big piece of it, the ability to look further, and as I mentioned with Daniel in the last question, the ability to look outside of my own building and understand the market conditions a little bit better. And how about you, Daniel? I mean, what if you were getting a new hotel for the first opportunity, where's the first stone you turn to look for some money to impress your new client? Let me ask you like that.
Well, now there are a lot of good inputs from William. I like this working smart with data. Really, when you get to the play, I love this phrase. I think you should write this down right away for an article or something. And Ari's product is very customer centric. So I would perhaps say, if I may add this, I would try to implement something like customer obsession in my team, really understanding the customer. We're living in a time of Netflixization, right? Everything has to be easy, everything has to be smooth. We need to solve. I think the hotelier needs to learn, right, to communicate digitally, to think digitally, and to solve these customer problems that would really, I think, also lead to, it leads to these to direct booking strategies, right? It leads to leaner processes, perhaps. So I think really putting the customer again in the center, and I love this Amazon leadership principle. Customer obsession, and we start with the customer and work our way backwards. So I think this, yeah, if I can add this, because the others already added all these elements.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So there was a question, and I'll ask you guys to chime in on this one real quick too, but I'm going to address it first. It says, how far do we think data analytics is going to impact the hotel industry? So when you talk about literally how far, I would say transparency is going to be the limit on that. If we don't get customer information from the online travel agents, for example, then we're going to have trouble with data analytics, because there's going to be a major blind spot in our data. So that's one of the things that's going to have a limitation, is customer data and transparency. And it's always been a contention with the online travel agencies. If you think about it, when you make a reservation on an online travel agency, the hotel doesn't get your email address. They get a dummy email address that's a pass-through, because they don't want you to have a direct relationship with them. So I think that's one of the things that's going to be a limitation for data. I think then, other than that, I think the sky is the limit for data. I think that as William mentioned, hotels are, first of all, they are absolute data just machines. They produce so much data about people. And as we start to get more and more into the Internet of Things, we're going to know more and more about what people do. And we're going to be able to create a more personalized experience with that. Imagine, if you register in the frequent traveler program of a company, and every single hotel room across the entire world, when you walk into the hotel room, the LED picture frames turn into a style of art that you like, that you've chosen. So imagine that level of personalization with data. So I think it's unlimited. Already they're personalizing the monument photo on websites. So when someone like Ari and Daniel goes to a website, they see young people at a pool having a good time. When someone like William and I go to a website, they see empty nesters, a little slower moving, good looking, but not too good looking, because I don't like to be around that anymore. So, so we're able to really personalize the booking experience that much. And it's only the beginning. The other limitation, and then I'll ask you guys for some input, is going to be the ethics of it, because we're talking about what we can do with data and technology, but we're not talking about what we should do with data and technology. So imagine mining someone's social media profile to understand that they're a foodie, and then launching a specific food-oriented pre-arrival marketing plan to that person. To me, that's cool personalization. It's giving me information I want. But imagine mining their social media profile for their race, and then doing something based on their race. So there's really it's one step, one from the other. So I think that there's a big issue that I think one of the limitations is not going to be some great moral board. It's going to be that companies have risk, just like data theft has created a low level of risk with technology. You only have to say a technology like facial recognition to understand that there's a much higher level of risk with some of that kind of stuff. So I think ethics is potentially a boundary for it as well. But let's go reverse this time. So Daniel, 2 seconds on that. What do you think about the analytics thing? Where's it going to end up?
Of course, I like your input on the ethics, because that what comes to the Swiss mind, right? Even though the code
that's right. It's data privacy.
We're looking at the contact tracing apps that they're about to set up. So yeah, I think just to undermine what you said, I was at this conference where the CTO of Microsoft held this short speech. I forgot his name, but he said everything that can be digitized will be digitized. So I think we need to gear up for the digital is the information age. A lot of things that we cannot imagine now. I think also, what will happen with mobility. Mobility will have a massive impact on hospitality, on the way we travel, go around. So to keep a fresh mind and to keep this a certain openness to these developments is, I think, quintessential, especially in our times.
Cool. Ari, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that much to add. I think you both have done an excellent summary of
the nerdy people like me
situation.
sitting around
So
yeah.
yeah, no, I think it's I think that in everything data is extremely important and extremely influential, and yeah, and this idea about how much you can do and how much you can improve the user experience and what the costs are is really an interesting ethical question. But I
think
what you
you
guys
your product is really kind of an answer to the question as well, because what your product allows a hotelier to do is really tap into big data, but not really increase their workload as a result of it, right? So I think that's a big piece of it is how do we get automation to do the repetitive stuff so we can make strategic decisions but not get involved in the minutia, because there was a time when a lot of revenue management was minutia. So definitely true. And William, how about you, man? What do you think in terms of the ethics piece, in terms of how big data is going to, analytics and that sort of thing is going to come in?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a really, excuse me, a big part of what comes in the future, but we're a good bit away from it, to be honest, certainly for our industry. I mentioned earlier that we're still in the plumbing stage, so we're still trying to get the technology infrastructure in situ and trying to get hotels to adopt things like channel managers, cloud-based PMSs, revenue management systems, CRM systems, and so forth. We're certainly in terms of RMS systems, we're still very much in the early stages. Maybe less than 10% of hotels are using an RMS system. And if you take, say, channel managers, which is the core of the plumbing system, you go back 10 years, maybe 15% of hotels are less used a channel manager. Now it's maybe 45%, but we've still a long way to go, I think. So we definitely need to get the plumbing sorted in terms of the integration of the different technologies that are there. The second point I would make is that the biggest issue that we have with data in hotels is that data sits in different silos. So you'll have a PMS and you'll have a ton of data, and you'll have a CRM system with a ton of data, but the two systems are not talking to each other. And you'll have data sitting in a booking engine which is not integrated in with their PMS system or the channel manager or the RMS system and so forth. And so today, the biggest challenge that hoteliers face with data is trying to get all this data into one location. And there is no system right now that will do all of that for them, Once that's in situ, then you can get to your data analytics side of things, and that's when it can be mind-blowing in terms of what we can do with data, and that's where things like artificial intelligence will come into play hugely. And for sure, things like GDPR and data privacy and so forth will always be there, and that's kind of the guardian of the gate for us, if you want to call it that. But yeah, I would like us to get to that data layer, that data analysis, much sooner than we are. But it's going to take a long time to happen, and primarily because we're still a very fragmented industry, and particularly at the smaller independent property, that it is very, very, very fragmented, and it's going to be tough for those guys to move up the food chain in terms of use of technology in the property, I think.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. Really, one of the other limitations is getting it all in the same place, because I know from looking at hotel performance, the most significant conclusions you can arrive to typically come from two separate pieces of paper, because it's really correlating two different pieces that you don't normally look at always in tandem, that really kind of sometimes finds you the most meaningful stuff. Okay, guys, so we talked about the upside, right? There's money to be made, 20% growth the first year just in implementing pricing recommendations at a small hotel, Ari, in your case. So it seems like it shouldn't be this tough, but obviously it is, right? So what do you think is important to really overcome any obstacles? And let me kind of ask you guys, each of you sort of in your lane, so to speak. So Daniel, how do we do the education piece that you were talking about?
Well, I'm a bit working on this idea of, hoteliers becoming requirement engineers, understanding really their requirements and bringing that, together with the technology, really understanding what they need, what fits in their particular situation. Because I think William will agree, it's not every solution is the right solution for a hotel. We talked about the revenue management system, perhaps comparing the big three versus the smaller players. So I think this is one thing that I think would help hoteliers to move ahead. There are some platforms that sustain that, and I'm thinking about these young kids. I think they were your students, right, Scott? The Hotel Hero,
Hotel Hero, right?
in
Hotel Hero,
Bern.
Hotelestat, some of those guys, right? That are
They're not
consolidating data.
completely there yet, but I think this is the solution. That, because what is the problem? The hotelier, there is so much information and he's overwhelmed, right? That's what happens. Oh, what should I take? What should I do? So I think he should take one step back, really understand his requirements, and then he could go for he could search for his technology in a more structured way. Now, I don't hope they go too far, because that's one part of our business model. That's how we make our money.
That's right.
To a certain extent. But again, we also need to further develop. I believe very much in continuous improvement. So I think this is one step that I'm currently a bit working on. How do we make hoteliers requirement engineers?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that there's no shortage of work for us, Daniel, right? When you go into a great big hotel with all the bells and whistles, you can still find 1,000 things to make it better. But at least they're building houses with hammers and nails, not with rocks and twigs. So I think if we can get out of the rocks and twigs era, I think we can provide more support to those guys. Hey, Ari, let me shift to you. One of the things I know about your company is you guys are growing through partnerships, right? So how does some of that stuff, over on the tech side, are you all supporting each other to evangelize the small independent part of the hospitality industry?
Yeah. So, I mean, so one thing, as William talks about, is the integrations and the connections between the data, and that's something we need in order for our system to work, and it's something that sort of everyone in this area needs. And in a way, so we're all doing our little parts of the problem. We're all solving our little parts of the problem, and hotels, as Dan is saying, is a very relationship-based industry as well. So when you've got this system where you've got existing relationships and trust, people need to have trust, and this need for integration. The best way we see of overcoming this is through partnerships with software that the hotels already trust. And so you've got we can see we are able to see other software that we think helps hotels. We're able to recommend that through our channels, and likewise they will do the same for us. And with that arrangement, everyone sort of does better, in that we all do better and the hotels do better. So
yeah, I think if you find technology that is current, I think you're then at least preaching to the converted, as opposed to trying to convert someone, right? And then it's just a question of helping them figure out the other components that would help it even do better. I think that's a great point. And William, how about you? Right? What what advice would you have for hoteliers that heard something today that that might work for them?
Just ask the question again, Scott. I mean, in terms of technology, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, so let's say that, I'm a hotelier. I logged into this webinar and I thought, wow, so far I've been running it manually. I only have a 19-room hotel. 5 years ago, I looked at a revenue management system. I was going to have to employ somebody. I never saw making enough money to get a return. So, but this is interesting. Now, what do I do next?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing is always about trying to educate yourself as much as possible. So in terms of being informed as to what technology is out there, and certainly I would definitely say, don't be too proud to ask for advice and help, either by talking to other hoteliers in your neighborhood, talking to suppliers, because you learn a lot by talking to suppliers and they'll give you a lot of information. We're more than happy to share information as much as we possibly can. And it's really about ascertaining, okay, look, if I'm looking to either change a piece of technology or try a new piece of technology, it's just, I say, to educate yourself as much as possible, look at the different systems out there, try and ascertain which one is right for your business, because there's a huge, there's a lot of choice out there, and in some respects, maybe too much so, that there's a little bit of noise around each of the different products. So you've got to try and ascertain which product does what and which one is a good fit for my business, for the size of the property that I have. but also, which one is well integrated with the other tech that I'm using. Is it going to solve problems for me or create additional problems? And, is it an easy system to use? Is it an easy system to train on? What's the support like? So, okay, once I've been sold the product, will the guy run off to the hills and not talk to me for the next 12 months? Or, are they really good in terms of their after sales service and their customer support as such, So things like reviews of the product, reviews of the company are really, really important. And then just references, talking to other hoteliers and saying, what systems are you using and why, and how do you find them? And, again, in terms of the technology, the robustness and the reliability of the tech, and also the company in terms of from a service point of view. Price usually is the last thing that people will make a decision upon, They'll argue or haggle with you on price, but yeah, it's the last bit.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting. It seems to me when we go through these decisions, I have to encourage people to not use price as the first disqualifier and then the end. It seems like has a role somewhere in the middle, not either.
Yeah.
So Ari, from your perspective, one piece of advice for a hotelier that wants to make more money.
Yeah, I mean, the simple one is just keep learning. Just keep. I mean, there are great resources available in general. What you're doing at LaRoche Daniels Academy in Switzerland, and yeah, and we all, as in the tech community, we're all publishing resources as well. And yeah, just keep learning. Just keep learning. Keep improving a little bit at a time, and with that mindset, it's like you'll get there.
Yeah, it's interesting what's happened, right, with some of this technology. It's resulted in a fragmentation of the industry. You guys mentioned, big legacy systems. If you wanted to have a CRM in hospitality 10 years ago, if you didn't have a good housekeeping module, you couldn't sell it to anyone, right? Because the whole thing was all tied together. And now the ability to create all these different pieces has created a new competitive landscape. It's created much more rapid innovation because, again, I don't have to have someone building a housekeeping module if my thing is CRM. And so I think that, right, it's, being able to put that tech stack together, as you mentioned, and constantly staying educated is really a super key piece of it. All right, Daniel, you get the final word, man. Tell me what would be your what would be your key takeaway? Boy, I hope they get this when they sign off for this webinar.
Ari stole mine. Of course, I was going to say learning. Don't worry. Well,
yeah, I was going to say, clearly that doesn't mean so you have nothing to say. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone.
No, perhaps, yeah, I need to come up with something, right? So perhaps it's sending kids to your masters, right? Sending the kids to your masters. I think leaving the comfort zone, perhaps even going further than mere learning, leaving the comfort zone and, really start to accept that digital is here to stay. I think that's a topic for some hoteliers too. It's not going to go away. It's going to stay. So I think this trying to leave this comfort zone, something that now also happened. So I think, this is.
I think that's a perfect one, Daniel. You know what I mean? Like I would almost give that the term. I think it's now these tools are available for a small independent hotelier. Don't be afraid to innovate, right? Don't be afraid to take stuff on. Don't be afraid to try something. Don't be afraid to be the first one, not the follower, right? I think that's kind of what it is. And it's not you're not making $100,000 software and hardware decision anymore. You might be making a monthly subscription decision with 2 months advance notice to cancel. So I think that's a great, try stuff, right? Innovate. It's even the costs are such that I have some hotels that I work with that will run 2 parallel systems for a couple months and decide which one they like better. You could never do that if everybody had to install their own server. So it's really a time when you can try stuff new. I think that's excellent advice for us to wrap up on. So guys, thank you so much, gentlemen. I think this was a super informative panel. It definitely hit on the topics that I would hope and we would touch on, which is really to encourage a small independent hotelier. If they haven't looked at this stuff in the last 3 years, it's all different and it's probably approachable now. So it's definitely worth considering. So thanks very much, guys. Want to remind everyone, you can catch this episode and all of our past episodes on our LinkedIn on LinkedIn. And I want to thank my panelists and wish everybody a happy Thursday.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thanks,
happy
Scott. Thank you.
Thursday.
Thank
See you, Ari. See you, Daniel.
Bye, Ari.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Bobby.
Bye-bye.